Politics as usual. I took my Frito to
Alright, welcome back to Politics as Usual, episode 8. 8, right?
Yeah, this is 8. Yeah, this is 8.
Our long-awaited mental health episode, which we've been teasing for what, like 4 or 5 episodes?
Yeah, for about 4 episodes.
Something like that. So how all this came about was episode 4 with our boy Plain Old Marcus. As we were rapping, we heard a voice from the back like, y'all ain't gonna offer me nothing to drink.
They are not referring to me.
So yeah, we went back there, and there was a young lady not sitting to my left who we poured her a drink, and she asked what we were doing. We explained the show, and she asked if we want to do a mental health episode. To which we responded, yeah, we were actually planning on that when we had the right person to come on and discuss it with, and lo and behold.
I'm no longer invisible. I'm present.
So you can go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell the people.
Sure. Thank you for having me on your show. Absolutely. I'm Crystal Mullen Johnson. I'm the owner and provider at Stride Counseling Services, located downtown Birmingham, 2024 3rd Avenue North. I am a mental health provider. So I thought it was suitable to have a conversation centered around mental health. We are seeing an increase in suicide in our community, high crime rates, and of course African Americans have many stigmas associated with receiving mental health treatment, and we want to debunk those myths or change the face of mental health. So I thought this would be a great demographic to have a conversation with.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for taking time.
And y'all relax, don't be so uptight.
Well, we are relaxed. I'm invisible.
I mean, I'm drinking, so I'm drinking.
Okay.
Like, it's good that you mentioned like the stigmas and the just kind of the things within our community, because about a month ago, a friend of mine on Facebook, a Facebook friend of mine, posted a story about this 9-year-old girl who had committed suicide.
Absolutely.
Down in I think it was Demopolis.
My hometown. Yeah, my hometown.
Are you from Demopolis?
I'm from
Demopolis. How come we have not? Like, why haven't we made that?
Why haven't we?
That's ridiculous.
I'm from Demopolis. Yeah.
Okay, well, we're both from Demopolis, so this story really touched home for us, for both of us, right?
And he was talking about, I think the comment was, how could a 9-year-old want to commit suicide?
Right.
And I've experienced mental health issues. So normally when I see stuff like that, typically don't comment because I don't like forcing stuff on people.
Right.
But when I look down and notice all the people commenting, right, she must have got this idea from somewhere. It must be like an online cult or something. And I went online and comment. I said, no, you'd be surprised. My first suicide attempt was at 9, and it was by hanging. I didn't know how to tie a knot, so it didn't work. I also didn't have the benefit of the internet because it was 1996, 1997.
Right.
So, and he was like, oh my God. And it was like that story was enough to make him go, oh, this is a real thing. Like, it's not just something. I think that's part of the problem, is there's not like a real face to it with people.
Right.
Like we're too timid to come out, even those of us who experience it, to come out and actually speak on what it is that we dealt with. So I'm glad you brought that point up, because I think that is the problem. I would almost say that it's a crisis at this point within our communities.
Right, it is a crisis, and I think that it's courageous of you to be open about your mental health problem that you experience. And I think people don't understand or can distinguish the difference between mental health and mental illness. Mental illness are conditions that affect how we think, feel, and behave. So they're classified disorders, and that can include depression and anxiety. And when you hear that, people think, that's probably normal, but there are people that form judgments about it and say there are people that have it that are crazy. but many of us function with some form of anxiety. It can be test anxiety, it can be social anxiety, it can be generalized anxiety. So there are different categories, you know, in terms of these disorders that people are experiencing. Now, to comment on the recent suicide of the 9-year-old, it was really sad. I think that's a very sensitive conversation because many people don't know what was happening, you know, in the dynamics of her family, or, you know, personally what she was going through. That was something that there may have been some emotions that, you know, she did not discuss with, you know, others, and obviously not with a mental health professional. But what I think is most important is that we teach children how to cope. Children cope based on how adults are coping in their environment. So as parents, mentors, teachers, it's very important that we're modeling healthy coping skills. How do you feel about that? I mean, I don't know what your situation was when you were growing up as a 9-year-old, thinking about harming yourself and your dark sense of reality. So talk to us a little bit.
So my depression kind of cropped up shortly after my parents divorced.
Okay, so that was a trigger for you.
Right.
Okay.
And going to school, it just wasn't a fun time. To go to school and stuff. Was picked on a lot, bullied and stuff. And I didn't understand it at the time, but it was just like this overwhelming urge to like not live anymore.
Okay.
Didn't work, so I was like, all right, well, that didn't work. And I think my mom noticed around 10 or 11 that I was increasingly withdrawn and very much just a very sad, dark person. So my mom took me to see a therapist. And I remember the therapist going, he had a depression.
Okay.
And he's like, I would like to start seeing him weekly. And I was like, no.
Right.
No. It's like, Mom, like, you know what happened to me in school with kids find out I'm going to see a therapist every week?
Right.
Like, that was like social suicide at the time.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was going to say, we're pretty much the same age, having been a child of, like, we came up right when, like, the internet, you know, started to boom. And so for like previous generations, they might not think like, okay, like if you're 9, 10, 11, you don't go through that stuff. But we began to be more open about it. We had forums, and we had things like that where it was more out in the open. We communicated about it more. So for me to hear that a 9-year-old was going through these things and committed suicide, like, yeah, I understand that. And especially because like that age, like she may not have known how, like you said, how to cope with that. Or
absolutely. I think coping is very important, not just for children, for adults too. But what does that mean exactly? We are taught, you know, how to behave. Our parents model to us what's appropriate or what they may consider inappropriate. And what I often hear, especially in our community among African American boys or men, they're taught to suppress.
Yep.
Yeah.
You are not a boy or a man if you cry. You know, you're taught to respond or behave in a situation where you probably should be emotionally responsive. So when you're continuously bottling up all of those emotions, whether it's anger, whether it's sadness, whether it's frustration, agitation, what happens? I mean, you start to see behaviors, right, manifest themselves. So if you don't talk about things, I mean, eventually, you know, those behaviors will manifest and we will start to recognize that something is wrong. And what I tell people, you know, if you don't talk about your issues, they will eventually be discovered because you eventually will act out in some type of way. Whether you're married, you may have an affair, you know, if you're not communicating what your issues are, like your needs or your desires or those things that, you know, meet your needs. Like those things are very important. So you have to communicate what's impacting you, and it's very important to identify a professional that can help guide you through that process, such as myself.
Yeah, because I mean, I was to the point you made about men being told to constantly bottle up. I was talking to a friend of mine, and she was talking about her child's father, and I was like, well, what's your problem? And she was talking about how he was acting and behaving because she had inconvenienced him in some way. And she was like, well, stop acting like a little bitch. And I was like, well, have you ever thought that maybe the reason he can't communicate effectively is because women in his life have told him to stop acting like a bitch whenever he like act out or express something? I was like, and you raising a son, like you should be very cognizant of that, because if you're telling your son the same thing, in 20 years you might find that he's behaving the same way as his father, and you don't know why, because you spent your life telling him that every time he has a problem or an emotion that he wants to express, that doing so is him acting like a bitch.
Yeah, and here's the thing, like, we're told that we're not supposed to show emotions, but men react in anger. So all of those emotions that we should feel, like sadness or grief or whatever, it gets funneled through the filter of anger, and that's the only way we express ourselves. And it's like
or anger or laughter.
Right.
Like those are the only two. I know a lot of grown men, the ones I grew up with, who only know laughter or anger. And I was that way for a while.
Well, I think also what men sublimate, meaning they are able to express themselves through a form of acceptable aggression, or just an outlet of expression. And that could be sports, like, you know, that accounts for, like, you know, like basketball, right? Like, you could be physically aggressive, and it's like, okay, you just get a little citation for that. Also, football is a great, you know, a way for you to sublimate. Karate, running exercise is a great way to sublimate, express, I think release anger. When you're running, those endorphins are being released, which is really great. But also, there are people that become substance abusers because they don't know how to, I mean, so that's the negative, because, you know, abusing a substance to internalize opposed to express, you know, what you're dealing with, or even just binge watching sports all day. I mean, I'm not saying anything's wrong with that, okay, but I mean, there are people that's the form, that could be isolation. So, you know, if you are struggling, whether you're a man or a woman, it's okay to reach out to a mental health professional, and no, you're not coming into the mental health professional telling you all of your business. Like, I hear that all the time. Like, why would I go talk to someone and tell them all of my business? Well, you talking to your homeboys about your business, perhaps, or, I mean, in some form or fashion, you're disclosing what's going on with you. But why not talk to a professional that's objective, meaning not providing personal experiences or advice to you? It's not advice giving. A lot of people think it's advice giving, but it's objective feedback based on the information you're sharing. We don't know the individuals that you're talking about, so we can't form these perceptions or judgments about the individual, and we don't know you. So, you know, it's like you're, you know, meeting someone that you're unfamiliar with, and, you know, there's a relationship that develops, a healthy relationship, not a romantic, but a healthy relationship.
Yeah, not like The Sopranos.
Yeah, no, nothing like that. It's nothing like what you see on TV. A lot of people watch these television shows and they're like, oh, I'm gonna come in her office, lay on the sofa, and just tell her all of my problems. You know, but there's some formality to that, so it's not a bad experience at all.
And I would even say, like, one thing I learned because I was extremely depressed all of last year, one thing I learned is everybody just ain't equipped to handle that. Like, there was, when my friends I grew up with found out what I was dealing with, one of my brother's friends was in our PlayStation group chat, and I disagreed with him about something. He said, man, kill yourself. And I stopped, and I paused, and I said, hey, man, you might want to make sure that when you say that statement to someone, they're not suicidal. And everyone was just like, whoa. And it was, and I told him everything that was going on, and I was like, I say that to say, like, you know, you never know what someone's dealing with. So your choice of words, I was like, if I had gotten off here and blown my brains out, you probably would have felt bad. And at that point in time, I was really close to doing that on a regular basis. And they were like, well, man, why don't you ever talk? I was like, y'all aren't emotionally equipped to handle that. Y'all solution to everything is, man, go get drunk and get some bitches. Like that's y'all solution to everything is like drink it away.
Dopamine release.
Right, and it's like, yeah, I spent a lot of time doing that. That didn't help me. You know, like, that's why I'm here now.
Where you begin to internalize everything.
Right.
Like, okay, I don't have anyone I can talk to, because if I do try to talk to them, they'll judge me. They'll laugh it off or something like that.
Right, and a lot of people's just kind of perception of it, pray it away. That's selfish. And it's like, you kind of get to the point where it's like, well, and I've asked people this. It's like, okay, so who's more selfish? Me for not wanting to live anymore, or you for wanting me to constantly live in pain?
Right.
Who's more selfish?
Right.
Because you wanting me to be here and be in pain constantly is for your benefit, not mine. Like, you're not offering me a solution, an alternative, or anything. Like, even, like, my mom was probably the only person who was like, yo, you should probably go to a therapist. Because, like, everyone else was like, maybe I...
Yeah, and I love the fact that you said solution alternative. You know, and therapists can provide solutions, working solutions to help you work through your problems. You also said something about prayer. Prayer is a great coping skill. Now, we are so infamous for selecting a unqualified professional.
Yes, for lack of better words.
Provide mental health counseling. So I think it's very important to practice in your scope. Whatever you know, are clinically trained to do, spiritually trained to do, medically trained to do, I think we need to, you know, be cognizant of that. And if there's someone that we can refer, you know, our loved ones to, or even decide to, you know, receive treatment from ourselves, you know, we know what their area of expertise is.
Because not everybody is capable of that. I mean, even if it's just like, I tell people all the time, like, you got to learn to compartmentalize people. Just because someone might be your best friend doesn't mean that they're capable of giving you beyond
they can be
mental
your
health
everything.
scope. Like that, everyone's not capable of giving you that advice. And I personally tell people constantly, even if they're not dealing with something, like, yo, therapy can be very helpful to you for figuring stuff out.
I sought out counseling. I've never been diagnosed with anything. I just reached a point where, like, I was just getting really anxious about things. I just wanted someone to just sort things out, to just talk about. So and that was really helpful for me. So yeah.
Listen to your body. Your body will tell you that maybe perhaps you should talk to someone. I mean, like I said, many people struggle with some form of anxiety, but when it starts to interfere with your functioning, maybe your performance in some areas, or your relationships with other people, so it's like social and occupational functioning, that's when you should ask yourself, you know, what would be some great solutions to deal with these feelings that I have? Remember, I said the way you feel, behave, and act.
Sure.
Okay, so that has a lot to do with mental health. Okay, your social, psychological, and emotional well-being. We should be concerned about our mental health from childhood throughout your lifespan. Like, it's not ever a time where you should say, I'm no longer concerned about my mental health.
It's a process. Yeah.
It's definitely
an ongoing process.
Absolutely.
Well, like my sister called me last year, and she was real anxious about my niece, my youngest niece, and she was like, she's acting out in school. I don't know what to do with her. And one of my cousins has a PhD in psychology and teaches at the University of Virginia. I said, well, call him. I said, he can probably give you some great advice on that. Like, I can give you something, but and his advice to her was, send her to a therapist. And my sister was like, why? He was like, go up your grandmother's side of the family. There's nothing but violence, and he's like, that stuff gets passed down.
Yeah, that trauma is hereditary.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad. I mean, it's very important for us to have awareness about transgenerational issues, because they directly affect, you know, generations, definitely. So yeah,
and she went, and it's helped her. And it was one of those things where my sister was like, oh my God, I would have never considered this.
Yeah.
And it's because of, in our fact, particularly, like, my dad, when he found out I was in therapy, was angry. Like, he cussed me out. He was like, why are you in therapy? You don't need that. That's weird. I was like, well, to you, but, you know, I'm still here, so, like, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and we're both from the mountains, so let's say
City of the people.
Yeah, City of the people, Vine and Olive Colony. But yeah, I've had people in my family say, like, you seem so calm now. How did you get that way? I was like, because of therapy, and because, I mean, we have the same family or whatever. I know what we've been through, and like I said, that stuff just gets passed down. It gets to the point where you think that's how you're supposed to be. It becomes normalized. Like, you think a man is supposed to be stoic and just not, like, just like not show any emotion besides like that anger. But no, like you're supposed to feel things, like it's supposed to flow naturally. So just you're not supposed to bottle that in. So I'm glad that I went, because a lot of my trauma was family-based trauma. I love my family, but you know how people can be. But so sometimes you just need to sort those things out.
Right. And one of the primary reasons I started my private practice was to educate African Americans in the community about mental health, because I recognize how undervalued mental health services were. So I thought it was very important to provide psychoeducation, where people can understand the importance of mental health treatment, or to distinguish, if they're having a particular disorder, by way of talking about it. And I think we need to continue to have these conversations and not be silent. I think there are way too many silent people, which is contributing to a lot of issues, whether it's crime, whether it's suicide. 60% of African Americans attribute to the prison population. So I mean, that's a pretty large percentage, I think. So we need to be aware of that. How can we identify solutions to reduce crime, or to reduce that statistic that I just reported?
I think it's identifying early, and it's even if you don't have some sort of mental health issue, therapy can just help you. Like, you might identify things about yourself that you just didn't know or didn't understand, because you're biased to yourself and the people around you are biased to you. So therapy is what helped me realize, like, I have a lot of problems. And I know myself pretty well, but it was like pretty eye-opening about, that's why I do that. That's why I do this. That's why I have this issue. And it can be very helpful, just because if you want to break the generational curses, as we like to call them, you got to know why those generational curses are there, and understand that even the people who love you can have contributed to some of your negative traits. And if you want to break that with your family going forward, that you gotta break away from those.
I mean, and our habitual negative thinking affects our relationships with people. Like, one of the forms of therapy that I do with my clients is called cognitive behavioral therapy, and the objective is to teach my clients how to reconstruct the way they see things, because our perception is not always reality, and we have to ask ourselves, why do we have these negative perceptions about people, about life, and it can just be a conflict, just poor conflict resolution skills. I mean, if you have a negative perception about a particular person, or how you perceive a message that someone is relaying to you, what happens? It creates what? Conflict. So I do see that there are poor coping skills and poor conflict resolution skills, and that's one of the things that I help my clients improve. Also, just understanding how their communication styles can greatly impact their relationships with others. Some people are aggressive, and you were talking about self-awareness, that's why I'm touching on this. And then there are people that are passive, and then there are people that are passive-aggressive. I see a lot of passive-aggressive people on Facebook, by the way. Instagram too. Yeah. So those communication styles can greatly impact, your relationships with others, and we have to learn how to have healthy relationships. Many people weren't modeled healthy relationships, and we don't get it. And what seems to be our norm may not be someone else's norm. So we have to be aware of those things too. So those are many reasons why mental health counseling is helpful. And I always tell my clients, like, this is an opportunity for you to self-discover. Like, it's a process of self-discovery, right? And Strive's tagline is building a foundation for a healthier you. And that's my objective, helping people become a healthier individual by discovering what their weaknesses are to improve them in areas that they can continue to strengthen.
like when you talk about like just like relationships, like one of the things I learned in therapy is like one of the biggest reasons that my marriage didn't work was I had a negative attitude towards marriage for most of my life. I have a grandmother that's been married like 9 times. My dad's been married like 4 times. My parents' marriage did not work. I've like not seen a healthy marriage from anyone in my family.
Right.
So my attitude towards marriage was kind of like,
yeah,
it probably won't work. So if it don't work, and it's like it don't work, and it's like, oh shit, this didn't work, and it's like, well, yeah, probably.
So you had that attitude going into
it, and not treating it like you should have treated it, and that can help contribute to those things.
Definitely. A relationship has to be nurtured by both parties. It's a great contribution from both parties. And you know, we believe relationships is just about love, but we have to truly believe that it's about friendship and the partnership that also comes with that. And I also think it's important to have a foundation in terms of spirituality. And understanding who you are. Like, how can you relate to someone else or love on someone else when you don't love yourself? You jump into relationships with your insecurities, and it starts to impact, you know, how you relate to your partner. Okay, you become controlling, domineering, and then that escalates to anger and hostility. Those are not healthy relationships, okay? So just kind of be mindful of what your contribution is to yourself and what you're contributing to other people's life.
Or I would even say, going as far to say, like, I think some people, and I notice this with a lot of friends and relatives who are in relationships, is a lot of times they confuse the absence of arguments with relational harmony. Like,
oh my God, that's a huge one.
Yeah, like the absence of conflict doesn't necessarily mean that everything is okay.
So that's passive aggressive,
right?
Or
avoidance, withdrawal.
I'll take it a step further. People only feel comfortable in conflict.
Absolutely.
Because I've seen that a lot. Where if, like, oh, you care for me if you, like, you know, talk down on me all the time, or you like checking up behind me all the time. That's not
pop up on my job.
Right, and that's not healthy. That's who you care. That's not healthy.
We don't want that to happen. And I think it's really important to take responsibility for how you feel and what you're doing to people, like how you are behaving. Like, we have to take responsibility for that, and then assertively express and take ownership and apologize. It's okay to apologize. Some people really struggle with that. Like, oh, I'm not going to give in. It's okay to be vulnerable. How can you be in a relationship and you're not vulnerable? But that's almost.
I would probably say among men that I know and women that I know, that's probably like the #1 relational issue is men's inability to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
I've had that issue of being unable to be, because it's like you grow up with this caricature of be tough, be tough, be tough, be tough, be tough. And if you've been told that your entire life, when it comes for a moment to be vulnerable, you're like, I don't know how to do that. Right. I'm uncomfortable in this space. So you immediately withdraw, or it's unable to work. And that's, I think that's a bigger, which is another reason therapy can help you.
I think so, yeah. The invalidation you highlighted, we have to validate our partners. And the withdrawal and the avoidance is passive aggressive, unhealthy. We have to be able to face conflicts and actively deal with them and find adequate solutions to working through them. So you can kind of avoid those hurdles, you know, going forward. Now, you're going to always have disagreements, but it's how you disagree. Okay? Like, you don't have to name call, batter your spouse. And you don't have to be physically aggressive. And I hear people say, well, if I don't talk loud, they're not going to understand me. Well, when you're talking loud, people have basically zoned out. They're not able to decode what you're saying. So you want the person that you're communicating with to be able to understand what you're saying. And not listen, just like understand what you're saying to adequately communicate to you, you know, what they need, what their needs are.
Right, and I think that goes back to understanding communication styles and understanding yourself. Because if you don't know how you're received or what your triggers are, how can somebody else be expected, you know, to know those same things? So I always tell people it's important to know when you're in a situation that can trigger you or cause you to act out of character. So at those times removing yourself isn't necessarily a bad thing. It can just be, hey, look, listen, this is going a place where I don't want it to go, so we cool off and we can come back to this later.
Yeah, that's the best piece of advice I've received. Like to just sometimes like step away, even like
Take a
just
time out.
time out, even just write your thoughts down so you can deliver it in a more clear way. Because if you're speaking out of emotion, you're definitely gonna say something you don't mean, and you're gonna escalate the situation. So sometimes it's cool to just step away, gather your thoughts, then
So what would you say are, I mean, granted every case is different, but what would you say for people are some healthy coping mechanisms?
Oh, I love talking about coping mechanisms. Well, it does vary, but I do believe that journaling is really healthy. Journaling is a great way to put those emotions pen to paper. And it's also great for reflection purposes. One of the things that I've tried doing from January, from the 31st to the 1st of the year, is reflecting over that year to see, you know, what my experiences were, you know, my highs and my lows. I mean, I think that's very important for growth and development. So journaling is great. Exercising, like doctors are prescribing exercise. Psychiatrists are prescribing exercise. I prescribe exercise. So I think exercising is great. I touched on earlier how exercising can help release those endorphins. Endorphins make you feel happy, just like when you're having sex, okay? So don't y'all like having happy sex? So happy workout. So that helps. And also monitoring your diet. Your diet can contribute to your mood, elevating or decreasing your hyperactivity. So just being mindful of your eating habits. And mindfulness, meditation, that is so awesome. That is so awesome. So learning those strategies, you can go to Pinterest or Google some mindfulness techniques or some meditation techniques. I mean, some people do it like by coloring. Those adult coloring books make me anxious, okay? Because I'm a perfectionist. I'm terrible. I mean, you really, I mean, if that's gonna frustrate you and you're a perfectionist, don't do that. Okay, that's not for everybody. They're cute and fun, but that may not be for everybody. Okay, so that's one. I also think devotions are really great. I am a firm believer in affirmations. Oh my God, those are so awesome. So just affirming daily in the morning, at night, you know, positive statements about yourself, or things that you would like to believe about yourself. Those are really helpful. Therapy, mental health counseling is a really great coping skill. I mean, because what happens, you learn techniques in therapy, like I was talking about cognitive behavioral therapy, and you know, there's some other techniques that I use as well, but I incorporate practical skills that you can take away after the session, apply them between that 1 week or 2 week time frame, and you start to integrate those practices into your daily living. Okay, so that's making you a healthier individual, right? So those are just a few, and I think those are some really great ones that I just named.
Well, I mean, I can speak from experience. When I changed my diet up and began exercising regularly, that was probably the most effective thing in me coming out of my depression. To getting to a point where I was functioning again.
Good.
It was, you know, I started exercising.
Yeah, you don't feel sluggish anymore.
Right. You know, exercise and eating right.
Energy.
And I think for me, it was just setting myself a goal, and it was kind of taking my brain off of it, to where I was doing that regularly, and I didn't really realize what it was doing. But now that you say that, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and for me, like I'm like a taskmaster, so what I do, I have to set like mini goals within a huge goal, and once I hit that mini goal, I just move on, and then next thing you know, you've achieved a big goal. So,
right, I like that.
And it's also getting yourself in the habit of doing something that's not like self-destructive.
Exactly. You just said what I was going to say.
Yeah, it's right. It's like for me myself, like I was getting off work drinking.
Right.
Constantly.
Yeah.
Like nothing but self-destructive behaviors. Right. And I think when it was like, all right, I'm gonna set this goal for myself. I'm gonna start working out. I'm gonna change my diet up, I'm gonna eat right. And that kind of like, you know, with each kind of little plateau that I made, it was like, okay, I feel better. And you look up and it's like, oh, you're 3 months removed from, you know, feeling away. And it's like, now you're in that habit of doing that.
Right.
And it's keeping you kind of out of those overshoots.
Right. Also, when I'm working with my clients, we're talking about time management as well. Like, I incorporate that in therapy. I think that's very important because we don't want to resort to those destructive behaviors.
Right.
Idle time can be destructive for some people. So just being mindful of that. And also your circle of friends, the people that you're surrounding yourself with. You know, identify what your conversations are like with those people, because sometimes you can be overwhelmed with their issues and not adequately dealing with your own. So I think that's something to kind of be mindful of as well.
I would go as far as to say, like, your social media intake too.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I've had to unplug like a few months ago, and I used to tweet a lot, but I found myself getting mad or even like upset at the world, and it's unhealthy. Yeah, it's unhealthy.
So what I do for myself, like, I can only look at social media so many times a day. So I have to decide the best time of day to do that. I'm primarily on social media for my business. I don't use it as an outlet of expression about much of anything other than Strive. But we have to be mindful of our forums and who we are communicating our stressors to. Some people use that as a platform to talk about their depression and anxiety. And you have to realize you're going to have some bullies come in and attack you during that most vulnerable period. So you have to understand your emotional intelligence to be able to deal with situations like that. So if you can't manage that, maybe that's not good for you.
Right.
Now, if you're on there, there's some really inspirational things that you can find on social media. And those are the things that I would be attaching myself to. So look for that opposed to drama. I mean, because looking at some people's timeline can be
nothing but drama.
Nothing but drama. It could be sad, like sad to see these stories, or and it can be depressing. So you have to understand what your mental state is when you're approaching that each day.
Yeah, and be careful who you're letting into your life. Not everybody has your best interest at heart. Like I see a lot of people who deal with, like, who don't realize that they're dealing with, like, depression and anxiety. They're constantly talking about their social media feed and so forth, these negative things, and I'm like, I'm not, like, that's not helpful to what it is that you're dealing with. Like, the stuff that you consume, you internalize that, and that has, like, real effects on the body.
It does, you know? Absolutely. And our screen time period, I mean, just not social media, we're talking about the news. I mean, be aware of how often you're exposing yourself to the trauma on TV. I mean, the world is kind of havoc right now. There are people that aren't working, you know, that works for the federal government. That's anxiety provoking, you know.
Or even down to, like, the police shootings when people are posting these videos of black bodies. Like, you're internalizing that trauma. It's making you numb, you know, and those are things that I think we have, like, I've noticed myself.
Like desensitized.
Right, exactly.
We're desensitized. Like, I've noticed with myself, I spend more time on social media when I'm idle and not doing something. You know, so I made it a point in the last couple weeks to, like, if I'm bored, like, before I pick up my phone, like, okay, check your homework. Are you ahead on that? Go learn a new song on piano.
Right.
Go pick up the phone, call somebody. Go talk to someone you haven't spoken to in forever. Like, go do those things before you just pick up the phone and just scroll on social media and see a bunch of negative nonsense because people are craving attention.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because I think that contributes to this. And people can say, well, just put the phone down, but I think people's concepts of addiction are very much out of whack. When they think of addiction, they think of a drug, when anything can be addicted to you if you are susceptible to it.
It doesn't have to be something tangible. Like, you, like, doing that activity, that's well, I mean,
addiction. Doesn't have to be anything
you
Right,
ain't saying
it's obsessive and compulsive. So we have the scrolling, we have the constant checking. So when you think of obsessive compulsive disorder, you have the obsessions, you have the compulsive behavior, and then what I talked about, the endorphin release, right? So when you're receiving likes, what does that do? It excites. It excites. So all of that, right? You're so on it. You're so on it. So all of that plays into, you know, making us feel good about ourselves.
Right.
But what, I didn't realize I had these earbuds on my mic. That is so not cool. I just realized. I don't know who does it. So, but my obsession. So anyway, having said that, we do need to be mindful of those behaviors that we aren't so aware of. Like, those are things that feed into, like, that reward system. That was really good. Yeah.
Yeah, like I would say, as someone who's experienced depression, being suicidal recently, your routine and the people around you can have the biggest kind of impact. I was lucky because I was dropped into a workplace where I was just surrounded by kind people who, even though they didn't know what I was dealing with, they were just compelled to be kind to me because that's just how they are. But I would definitely say to people, what you're intaking and your routine can play a big role in that. And just because I had to learn this lesson, and just because I've known some of the people I grew up with for 20 some odd years, and nothing against them, but they aren't the people I'm going to run to when I'm in a time of crisis. Like, they're not equipped for that because I know the advice that they're going to give me, and I know they don't understand. They don't have the emotional intelligence to understand what I'm dealing with.
Absolutely.
And even with people like, I've talked to people and they're like, well, you got a lot going for yourself. I'm like, I don't have a crisis of confidence. I know who I am. I don't need you to remind me that I'm good at what I'm good at. Like Deandra, for example. I've known Deandra 3 or 4 years, something to that effect. And I know I can pick up the phone and call Deandra, and Deandra will make me calm. Sometimes I've had to do that. And there are people I've known longer that I can't do that with, and that's okay. Like, sometimes knowing that just because you've known someone a long time, they may not be equipped to handle what you're handling, and that doesn't make something wrong with them or you. It's, you have to find people that are capable of putting you in a place to where you feel better if you're experiencing that crisis and you can't get to, you know, a mental health professional. Like, one of the things I did for my birthday last year was I shared a list of kind of alternative mental health outlets for people who may not have the money or the insurance to be able to go through and do this, because everybody isn't fortunate like me to have a circle of people to understand or to have money to go.
Yeah, my workplace offered it, and not everyone is fortunate enough to work somewhere that would pay for that. So,
gosh, y'all are mind reading, which is problematic thinking. But no, seriously, I was actually about to comment on that. The Affordable Healthcare Act has given people the opportunity to seek mental health treatment. It really concerns me because they're wanting to phase it out. That is a huge problem. I hope they have a great replacement if they do. But there are nonprofit organizations in the city such as Gateway, Oasis Family Counseling, Impact Family Counseling. I have a private practice which is for profit. So, you know, of course the fees are a little different, but I do accept insurance. Like you were talking about, your company has insurance. Become more familiar with your healthcare plan. You probably do have mental health coverage. And some people get free sessions. Some people have contracts with like Behavioral Health System, American Behavioral. I have contracts with them. I also have a contract with the Department of Human Resources. Several different companies, organizations in the city. So just research what those options are. And also I do some pro bono work. I'm taking 2 free cases, offering 2 free cases to clients each month because I understand the dire need in our community for mental health treatment. I'm really good at what I do, so I want to offer my services to people that can't afford it. So I think it's great that you shared that list, but there's help out there. Just Google mental health counseling in Birmingham, Alabama. If you're interested in seeing me, you can reach me at 205-721-9893. My website is www.strive like moving forward. We're moving forward to build a foundation for a healthier you. So that's www.strivebhm.com, and I'm downtown Birmingham. So
we'll put that in the
we'll
video.
Good, great. So I think that's awesome that y'all are doing this, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come on the show today and have this conversation with you. There's so many topics that we can cover pertaining to mental health, but one of the things that was most important to me is helping people understand what mental health is and mental illness. And mental health affects your emotional, psychological well-being, and mental illness are disorders that affect the way you act, feel, and behave. So understand that, and a mental health professional is objective in providing guidance, counseling, and skills for you to learn how to cope with those problems that you may be having.
Yeah, she put that great.
I think that's a great place to wrap it up.
Yeah, so we'll put all of her information in the description of the video. Please check that out. I will go ahead and add what I found last year. I'll add that in the description to the video as well. Because like I said, I feel like mental health in the Black community is definitely it's at a crisis at this point. For a lot of people, and I think the sooner we take that serious, the sooner we can kind of move forward and not continue to have these same issues that we've been having within the community. Because you don't want to wake up tomorrow and be like, man, I wish I'd have known, or I wish I would have done something, or I wish I could have done something. So now isn't the time to be prideful, or I don't need that. I don't take it from someone who's been it can't hurt. It can only help.
Right. Well, a high five to the audience and a fist bump.
So until next time, if we'd love to have you back and do some more like zeroed in stuff.
I would love that. I would love that.
Different stuff. Because like I said, this is an issue near and dear to us, and we definitely want to make sure that we do our part as far as disseminating information and putting a face to this very
I'm so
serious
excited.
issue.
I'm so excited to see y'all doing this. I mean, as a Black man, this is really impressive. So
thank you.
Thank you again for having me.
Thank you. Well, until next time, we will catch y'all. I don't know when next time.
I don't know. We'll figure it out.
But until next time, thekidswearcrowns.com, strivebhm.com, 2200trim.com. Book yourself a cut. We'll catch y'all next time. Peace.
Politics as usual.